Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Good morning, everyone. We are from Group 2. We will present about the problem analysis and research variable, which member Devi Rusdyani, Fadisya, Ivana, Dhea, Fikrah, Hafiz, Suni, and Gebby Dwy Jeffany. For the first material about hypothesis will be explained by me. The definition of hypothesis according to Hasnunida 2017, the hypothesis is a temporary solution to the research problem. It is a prediction about the possible outcome of study. The hypothesis is not necessarily true. Whether or not a hypothesis is true depends on the test result from empirical data. The hypothesis is also the result of thought or reflection from incomplete empirical data. The main function of the hypothesis is to open the possibility to test the truth of the theory. And according to Jim and Ruhiyat 2021, the hypothesis describes briefly the conjecture about the relationship of or influence between the independent variables on the dependent variable in the study so that it can direct the research steps and the statistical test media to be used. A good hypothesis is written briefly in clear and simple language. This means that the writing of the hypothesis must be specific, clear, and testable. Thus, it can be understood that the writing of hypothesis can be attempted in a directed form but not absolute. About the hypothesis condition, according to Satyawan 2021, there are four requirements for a good hypothesis. Namely, for the first is the hypothesis should be a formulation of the relationship between two or more variables. And the second, the formulated hypothesis should be accompanied by reasons or theoretical foundation and the result of previous findings. Hypothesis must be testable, and the last is the formulation of the hypothesis should be short and concise. The hypothesis form. There is three forms of hypothesis. For the first is descriptive hypothesis. Descriptive hypothesis is a temporary answer to descriptive problems, namely those relating to independent variables, either one or more variables. And the second is comparative hypothesis. The comparative hypothesis is a temporary answer to the formulation of a comparative problem. In this formulation, the variables are the same but the population or sample is different, or the situation occurs at the different time. And the third is associative hypothesis. The associative hypothesis is a temporary answer to the associative problem formulation, which asks the relationship between two or more variables. Hypothesis formulation according to Setyasari 2016, the formulation of research hypothesis based on the direction or tendency we can classify into two. Namely, for the first is the directed hypothesis or directional hypothesis and the non-directional hypothesis. Okay, that's all from me. The next material will be presented by Fadisya, Ivana, Dhea. To Fadisya, time is yours.
Material is about research system, planning a research strategy, and formulating appropriate investigation is critical to generating scientific evidence. According to Arif, 2021, the steps for planning the formulation of investigation are first is introduction, the problem, or what is behind research. This is the point of the question is development of the concept of question. The next is design question based on what method you want to use in answering the question. The next is combine the question. The next is submit question to respondent. Next is evaluate the result of the test question. Next is customize and test question. And the last one is recapitulation of the result. material is about research method, definition of research method. First is according to Ramdan, 2021. In general, the research method is defined as a scientific way to obtain data with different goals and strengths. According to Nurdin Ismail, in 2019, research method is a way to get the return to the solution of all the problems solved. Research objective, according to Ramdan, 2021, is first to investigate a problem that arises in the world of work that requires a solution. The second is for the systematic and critical control and critical investigation of a phenomenon of concern to managerial decision. And next is to explain, make prediction, and control phenomena that occur within the climate boundary and ability. And the next material is type of research for Ramdan 2021. The first is quantitative research. The type of quantitative research is a systematic investigation of a phenomenon by collecting data that can be measured using statistical, mathematical, or computational techniques. Quantitative research is widely used in both natural and social science. And the next type is qualitative research. Qualitative research is research that tends to have a descriptive nature and tends to use analysis. Process and meaning are highlighted in qualitative research. Generally, qualitative research obtains data from interviews and observations. And the next type is descriptive research. According to Ramdan 21, descriptive research is research used a method to describe a research. So I think that's all material from me. I give it back to the moderator.
Okay, thanks to Fadisya. The next material will be presented by Fikrah. To Fikrah, time is yours.
Okay, thanks, moderator. For the next material is about the population. Next slide, please. Definition of population. According to Nurdin Ismail et al. 2019, population is the whole subject of research. And then according to Margono, population is all data that is of concern to us in a scope and time that we specify. So the population deals with the data, not the people. If every human being provides a data, then the number of size of the population will be equal to the number of humans. Population is the subject of research. Population is a generalization area consisting of object or subject that have certain quantities and characteristics determined by the researcher to be studied and then draw conclusions. In short, the population is defined as the generalization area of the research results. The generalization can be done to the object of research and can also be done to the subject of research, according to Dhea 2019. And then about the types of population. Judging from the determination of data source, according to Novianti Leni 2017, there are two types of population based on judging from the determination of data sources, namely limited population and infinite population. And then population judging from the complexity of population objects, according to Nordin Ismail et al. 2019, there are two types of population based on population judging from the complexity of population objects, namely homogeneous population and heterogeneous population. Next, about the sample. The definition of sample, according to Novarian Tilani et al. 2017, sample is part of the number and characteristics possessed by the population. According to Novarian Tilani, the sample is part of object taken from the entire object under study and is considered to represent the entire population. And while according to Jaya 2019, the samples is part of the number and characteristics possessed by the population. And according to Ardani, Chris and Azwadi 2018, sampling occurs when the population is large and it is impossible for the researcher to study everything in the population. The sample is part of representative of the population studied. Next. The next is the sampling techniques. There is two opinion. The first is according to Hidayanti et al. 2019. The sampling technique, the first is sampling with replacement. Namely, each selected sample member is returned to its place before the next election is held. This allows that a sample be selected more than once. And the second one is sampling without replacement, which each selected sample member is no longer returned to the population unit. And the second is according to Amirullah 2015, the process of sampling are defining population, determining the sample frame, selection of sampling technique, determining the sample size, and implementation of the sampling process. I think that's all from me. I give it back to moderator.
Okay, thanks to Fikrah. The next material will be presented by Gebby Dwy Jeffany. To Gebby, time is yours.
Okay, thanks to moderator. I will explain about sampling technique used. The first is random. This random way is also called a chain sample or translate randomly. Each member of the population has an equal chance. Each member of the population has an equal chance of becoming a sample member. Sampling of all members of the population is done randomly, regardless of the strata present in the population members. The random technique consists of the first is simple random sampling, the second systematic random sampling, and the last is stable random sampling. And the second sampling technique is non-random. Non-random is a sampling technique for certain consideration. Each member of the population does not have an equal opportunity to become a member of the sample. Even sometimes members of the population are unclear. Sampling techniques by non-random are as follows. The first is purposive sampling. The second is quota sampling. And the third is accidental or incidental sampling. Next slide, please. And the next is the other is sampling technique. The first is systematic sampling. The sampling technique is a sampling technique by determining samples based on the order of the members of the population that have been numbered in sequence. The second is a stratification sampling. This technique is used when the population has members or characteristics that are not homogeneous and proportionally abstract. The third is group sampling or cluster. Cluster sampling techniques are used to determine a sample when the object to, to be studied or the data source is very broad. For example, the population of a country, province, or district. The fourth is area random sampling. Random sampling area use a region approach. A region is a geographically defined using vertical and horizontal lines so that books are formed. The fifth is single sampling. Single sampling is usually associated with random sampling technique, which are only done once without any repeats or additional sampling. The next is multi-stage random sampling. Multi-stage random sampling is usually translated by multi-level or gradual sampling. The next is sequential sampling. Sequential sampling is concerned with the need for researchers to support their opinions. And the last is a double sampling. A refill with a double sampling is usually done if the taking with only one or single conclusion does not support the research or researchers to feel hesitant with the result of the study conclusion. The second sampling is a occasion to compare the result of the first sampling. Okay, that's all from me. I give it back to moderator. Thank you.
Okay, that's all the presentation from our group. If there are any participant want to ask question, please type your name in the chat box. Okay, if no one, I will end the presentation. Thank you for your attention and we feel sorry for our mistake. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.